So what in national news this morning, NBA legend Irving Magic Johnson has been living with HIV for 30 years. Johnson recently sat down with CBS's Gayle King to talk about what life has been like after his diagnosis, which at the time was considered to be a death sentence.
First of all, let me say good after late afternoon. Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers.
He owns 5 NBA championship rings and 4 professional sports franchises. Please welcome Irving Magic Johnson.
At 66 years old, the name Magic Johnson still echoes through the world of basketball like a legend that refuses to fade. For decades, fans have remembered him as the smiling superstar who lit up arenas with dazzling passes, impossible plays, and a style of basketball that seemed almost magical. His career with the Los Angeles Lakers transformed the NBA into a global spectacle, and his rivalry with players like Larry Bird became one of the most celebrated chapters in sports history. To the outside world, Magic Johnson appeared to have everything: championships, fame, wealth, and a legacy that few athletes could ever match. But behind the bright lights and roaring crowds lies a story that is far more complicated. Magic Johnson's life has not been defined only by triumph. It has also been marked by heartbreak, personal loss, and battles that tested his strength in ways most people could never imagine. While fans saw a confident superstar smiling on television, there were moments in his life filled with fear, doubt, and painful uncertainty. His journey reminds us that even legends carry burdens that the public rarely sees. In recent years, Magic Johnson has remained active in business, philanthropy, and public life. Even in his 60s, he continues to inspire people with his energy and determination. Yet there have been moments when the emotional weight of his past seemed to rise to the surface. During one public appearance, observers noticed something different about the usually upbeat icon. His voice reportedly slowed as he spoke, and for a brief moment he appeared overwhelmed by emotion. People in the room described the atmosphere as heavy and deeply emotional. Magic paused more than once while speaking, as if gathering the strength to continue. For fans who had followed his journey for decades, seeing him in such a vulnerable moment was difficult. This was the same man who had once stood fearless in front of the world during one of the most shocking announcements in sports history. More than 3 decades earlier, Magic Johnson had delivered news that stunned the world. In 1991, at the peak of his career, he revealed that he had tested positive for HIV. At the time, the virus was surrounded by fear, misunderstanding, and stigma. Many people believed it was a death sentence. For a superstar athlete at the height of his powers, the announcement seemed unimaginable. Standing in front of reporters, Johnson spoke openly about the diagnosis. The room was silent as he explained that he would have to step away from professional basketball. Fans across the country were shocked. For many, it felt like the sudden end of one of the most electrifying careers in sports. The announcement did more than shake the basketball world. It changed the way people talked about HIV. In the early 1990s, public understanding of the virus was limited, and misinformation was everywhere. Magic Johnson suddenly became the most visible person in the world living with HIV. The pressure on him was enormous. Despite the fear surrounding the disease at that time, Magic refused to disappear. Instead of hiding from the public eye, he chose to face the situation head-on. He began speaking openly about his condition and encouraging people to educate themselves about HIV. His honesty helped break down misconceptions and gave hope to millions of people who were facing the same diagnosis. But while the world saw courage, the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated. Living with HIV meant constant medical monitoring and lifestyle changes. It meant waking up every day with uncertainty about the future. And it meant carrying the emotional weight of knowing that millions of people were watching his every move. For Magic Johnson, the diagnosis also meant something even more painful: the sudden end of the career he loved most. Basketball had been his entire life. From the moment he first picked up a ball as a child, the game became his escape, his purpose, and eventually his path to greatness. His extraordinary vision on the court made him unlike any player the NBA had ever seen. At 6'9", he played point guard with a creativity that seemed almost impossible. Fans watched in amazement as he delivered no-look passes and orchestrated fast breaks with incredible precision. Under his leadership, the Lakers became one of the most dominant teams of the 1980s. Their exciting style of play became known as Showtime, and Magic Johnson was its shining star. But when he announced his HIV diagnosis in 1991, everything changed overnight. At just 32 years old, Johnson was forced to walk away from the NBA. For an athlete in his prime, the decision felt devastating. The locker rooms, the games, the competition, all the things that had defined his identity suddenly disappeared. Friends and teammates later described how difficult that transition was for him. Magic had spent his entire adult life preparing for basketball seasons, training relentlessly, and competing at the highest level. Without the daily routine of the sport, he faced a sense of emptiness that few people could truly understand. Yet even in that painful moment, Magic Johnson refused to accept defeat. He remained determined to stay connected to the game that had shaped his life. Not long after his retirement announcement, he began exploring ways to return to the court. In 1992, he made his first attempt at a comeback. The world watched closely as he stepped back into the spotlight. Fans were excited to see the legendary point guard return, hoping that the Magic they remembered would appear again. But the situation was complicated. Some players in the league expressed concerns about competing against someone living with HIV, reflecting the fear and misunderstanding that existed at the time. The reactions were mixed. While many fans cheered his courage, others remained uncertain. Magic suddenly found himself at the center of a debate that extended far beyond basketball. Despite the challenges, he continued pushing forward, determined not to let fear control his future. That determination became one of the defining qualities of his life. But the challenges Magic Johnson faced did not begin with his HIV diagnosis or his early retirement. Long before he became a superstar athlete, he had already experienced hardships that shaped the person he would become. Magic Johnson, whose real name is Irvin Johnson Jr., grew up in the city of Lansing, Michigan, in a large family filled with love, but also financial struggle. With many siblings living under one roof, life was often crowded and resources were limited. His father worked extremely hard to support the household, sometimes taking multiple jobs to provide for the family. His mother also worked long hours, cleaning classrooms and doing whatever she could to help make ends meet. Young Irvin watched his parents sacrifice day after day. He saw the exhaustion in their faces and understood from an early age how much effort it took just to keep the family going. Those experiences left a deep impression on him. Even as a child, he felt a strong sense of responsibility. He wanted to succeed not only for himself, but for his entire family. Basketball quickly became the path he believed could change everything. From a young age, Magic spent countless hours practicing. While other kids were playing casually, he was already dreaming of something bigger. The basketball court became a place where he could escape the difficulties of everyday life and focus on improving his skills. Yet even during those early years, the road was not easy. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood meant that opportunities were limited. Magic often had to prove himself again and again, showing coaches and teammates that he was capable of greatness. Still, he never stopped believing in his dream. What no one realized at the time was that the challenges he faced during childhood would prepare him for the much larger battles that were waiting later in his life. Because as Magic Johnson would eventually learn, fame and success do not protect anyone from tragedy. And some of the most painful moments of his life were still yet to come. Long before the fame, the championships, and the bright lights of professional basketball, Magic Johnson was simply a young boy trying to find his place in a world that did not always welcome him. Growing up in Lansing, Michigan, life was filled with both hope and hardship. The Johnson household was full of energy, laughter, and siblings competing for attention in a crowded home. But behind that lively atmosphere was the reality of financial struggle. Magic's father worked tirelessly to support the family. Some days began before sunrise and ended late at night. His mother, equally determined, spent long hours cleaning classrooms and doing everything she could to help provide for their children. Watching his parents work so hard left a lasting impression on young Irvin Johnson Jr. He understood early that success would require discipline, patience, and sacrifice. Still, childhood was not always kind to him. At times, Magic helped his father with garbage collection routes. The work was difficult and physically demanding, especially for a young boy. He woke up early to ride along on the trucks, learning firsthand what it meant to earn a living through hard labor. His father believed that honest work built character, and Magic carried those lessons with him for the rest of his life. But not everyone saw it that way. At school, some classmates noticed the work he did and began to mock him. They laughed, pointed fingers, and sometimes called him cruel names. One nickname that stuck with him for years was Trash Boy. For a young teenager trying to build confidence, those words cut deeply. Magic rarely spoke about how painful those moments were. On the outside, he tried to laugh it off, pretending the teasing didn't matter. But inside, the humiliation stayed with him. Being mocked for helping his family survive left emotional scars that would take years to heal. Yet even during those painful experiences, something powerful was forming within him. Instead of allowing the ridicule to break him, Magic slowly turned it into motivation. Every insult became fuel. Every moment of embarrassment pushed him to work harder on the basketball court. If people doubted him, he would prove them wrong through talent and determination. That mindset would soon be tested in another difficult chapter of his life. When Magic attended a predominantly white high school, he entered an environment where he often felt isolated. Some students treated him with hostility from the very beginning. The tension was impossible to ignore. At times, the rejection he experienced went far beyond simple teasing. There were moments when students shouted insults at him. On the bus rides to school, he sometimes felt unsafe, unsure what kind of hostility he might face that day. The experience left him feeling like an outsider in a place where he simply wanted the chance to learn and compete. Even on the basketball court, where his talent should have earned him respect, the situation was complicated. Some teammates hesitated to pass him the ball. Others treated him as if he didn't belong. For someone who loved basketball so deeply, that rejection was heartbreaking. Magic later admitted that those experiences filled him with anger and confusion. He struggled to understand why he was treated differently. But instead of letting bitterness consume him, he made a decision that would shape his future. He would rise above it. Every insult and every moment of rejection became another reason to push himself harder. He spent hours practicing, determined to become so good that no one could ignore his talent. Slowly, his incredible ability began to speak louder than the prejudice around him. Basketball was becoming more than just a game. It was becoming his voice. But even as he began to find confidence on the court, tragedy struck in a way that left a deep and lasting wound. When Magic was just 18 years old, he lost one of the most important people in his life. his best friend, Reggie Chastain. Reggie had been by his side throughout childhood, supporting him during the difficult years when others doubted his dreams. Their friendship was built on trust, laughter, and the shared belief that Magic could achieve something special. Then, without warning, everything changed. Reggie Chastain was killed in a car accident. The news shattered Magic. For a young man who had already faced bullying and discrimination, the loss of his closest friend felt overwhelming. Reggie had been someone he could rely on, someone who understood him when the world felt unfair. Suddenly, that support was gone. Magic carried the grief with him everywhere he went. Even as his basketball career began to rise, the memory of Reggie remained close to his heart. He often thought about the conversations they had shared and the encouragement his friend had given him. In many ways, that loss became another driving force in his life. Magic believed that Reggie would have wanted him to keep chasing his dreams, so every time he stepped onto the court, he carried that memory with him. It was a quiet motivation that pushed him forward. Soon, the talent that had been growing in the gyms and playgrounds of Lansing began to attract national attention. Magic Johnson's unique style of play, his incredible court vision, creative passing, and natural leadership made him stand out from other players. Before long, the young star found himself stepping onto a much bigger stage, the National Basketball Association. When Magic joined the Los Angeles Lakers, the world quickly realized they were witnessing something special. His energy transformed the team's offense into a fast-paced spectacle that thrilled fans across the country. Together, with teammates like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic helped build one of the most exciting eras in basketball history. The Lakers' high-speed style of play became known as Showtime, and arenas filled with fans eager to watch the magic unfold. With every victory, Magic Johnson's reputation grew larger. He was no longer just a talented player. He was becoming a global superstar. Yet the success brought its own set of challenges. Fame can be exhilarating, but it can also be isolating. As Magic's popularity exploded, his life became more complicated. Cameras followed him everywhere. Fans wanted autographs, photos, and moments of his time. But behind the smiles and celebrations, the pressure was intense. Every game came with enormous expectations. Fans expected greatness every night. Media commentators analyzed every pass, every shot, and every decision he made on the court. For Magic, the weight of those expectations sometimes felt overwhelming. Physical injuries also began to take their toll. Long seasons, constant travel, and endless practices pushed his body to the limit. Knee pain, back soreness, and exhaustion became part of his routine. Yet he kept pushing forward. Magic rarely allowed the public to see how much pain he was carrying. Instead, he continued to smile, entertain crowds, and lead his team with the same enthusiasm that had made him famous. But the combination of pressure, injuries, and the relentless spotlight was slowly building toward a moment that would change his life forever. Because in the early 1990s, just as his career seemed unstoppable, Magic Johnson would face a diagnosis that shocked the entire world. A moment that forced him to step away from the game he loved and begin the most difficult battle of his life. When Magic Johnson revealed in 1991 that he was living with HIV, the reaction from the world was immediate and overwhelming. Fans were stunned. Teammates struggled to process the news. Reporters rushed to understand what it meant for the future of one of the greatest players the game had ever seen. In a single moment, the life of the smiling superstar changed forever. For the Los Angeles Lakers, it felt like the end of an era. Magic had been the heartbeat of the team for more than a decade. His passes had created unforgettable highlights. His leadership had guided the Lakers to championships, and his personality had helped make the NBA more popular than ever before. Suddenly, the player who had brought so much excitement to the league was stepping away from the court. The decision was heartbreaking, but Magic knew it was necessary. At the time, medical knowledge about HIV was still developing, and fear surrounded the disease. Many people believed it was impossible for someone with the virus to continue playing professional sports safely. Faced with those concerns, Magic chose to prioritize his health and the well-being of others. Yet even as he stepped away from the game, he refused to allow the diagnosis to define him. Instead of disappearing from the public eye, Magic Johnson began using his voice in a new way. He spoke openly about HIV, encouraging people to educate themselves and to support those living with the condition. In doing so, he helped challenge the stigma that had surrounded the virus for years. But deep inside, the competitive fire that had fueled his basketball career never truly faded. Not long after his retirement, Magic began thinking about returning to the game he loved. The court had been his home for so long that life without it felt incomplete. Fans still remembered the electrifying plays, the dazzling passes, and the joy he brought to the sport. In 1992, Magic made his first attempt at returning to professional basketball. The announcement sent shockwaves through the sports world. Some fans were thrilled by the possibility of seeing him play again. Others were uncertain, still influenced by the fears surrounding HIV at the time. Debates filled television broadcasts and newspaper headlines. Despite the mixed reactions, Magic stepped onto the court with determination. He wanted to prove that he could still compete, and that his diagnosis did not mean the end of his athletic ability. Yet the situation was complicated. Some players expressed concern about physical contact during games. Others simply didn't know how to react. The tension created an uncomfortable atmosphere that made the comeback more difficult than Magic had expected. Though he continued to show flashes of the brilliance that had once made him unstoppable, the environment around him was different. The constant attention, the questions from reporters, and the emotional strain made it hard to focus purely on basketball. Still, Magic refused to give up. Several years later, in 1996, he made another attempt to return to the NBA. By this time, medical understanding of HIV had improved significantly, and attitudes toward his situation had begun to change. Fans once again watched with excitement as the legendary point guard prepared to play. When he stepped back onto the court, there were moments when the old Magic seemed to reappear. His passing ability, his vision, and his leadership still made an impact. Younger players now dominated the game with speed and athleticism. For Magic, the challenge of keeping up with a new generation of talent was enormous. Even though he played with passion and determination, it became clear that the chapter of his life as a player was slowly coming to an end. The realization was painful. Basketball had shaped his identity for so many years that letting go of it completely felt like losing a part of himself. Still hoping to stay connected to the sport, Magic tried another role within the organization he loved. He accepted a coaching position with the Lakers, believing that his experience and knowledge of the game could help guide a new generation of players. At first, he approached the opportunity with enthusiasm. Coaching seemed like a natural extension of the leadership he had shown throughout his career. But the reality turned out to be far more difficult. After only a short time, just 16 games, the coaching experiment came to an end. The results on the court had not met expectations, and Magic found himself facing criticism that felt deeply personal. For someone who had spent years being celebrated as a champion and visionary player, the failure was painful. It forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth. Greatness as a player did not always translate into success as a coach. For a while, the disappointment weighed heavily on him. Magic had always been known for confidence and optimism, but this moment challenged those qualities. He began to question whether he still had a place in the sport that had defined his life. Yet once again, The resilience that had carried him through so many hardships began to emerge. Instead of allowing setbacks to define him, Magic Johnson started building a new chapter beyond basketball. He shifted his focus toward business, philanthropy, and community development. With the same determination that had once driven him on the court, he began investing in businesses and projects designed to support underserved communities. Over time, those efforts transformed him into one of the most successful former athletes in the business world. His ventures expanded into theaters, restaurants, sports ownership, and real estate. The same vision that once allowed him to see plays before they happened on the basketball court now guided him in building opportunities for others. But even as his professional life flourished, the emotional scars of the past never completely disappeared. Magic Johnson had experienced loss, humiliation, illness, and the pressure of global fame. Each challenge had left its mark on him. Yet those same experiences also shaped the strength that millions of people admire today. He often speaks about the importance of perseverance, about the idea that adversity does not have to define a person's future. For Magic, every painful chapter of his life became a lesson in resilience. Today, at 66 years old, Magic Johnson stands as more than just a basketball legend. His story has grown into something far larger than the championships he won or the records he helped set. He represents courage in the face of fear. He represents hope for those battling illness. And he represents the belief that even the darkest moments can lead to new beginnings. When fans look back at his career, they remember the dazzling passes and unforgettable victories. But perhaps the most powerful part of his legacy is not what he accomplished on the court. It is the way he faced life's greatest challenges with honesty, determination, and a refusal to give up. Magic Johnson's journey proves that greatness is not measured only by trophies or statistics. It is measured by the strength to keep moving forward, even when the path becomes incredibly difficult. And that is why, decades after his final game, the name Magic Johnson continues to inspire people around the world. His story is not just about basketball. It is about courage, survival, and the unbreakable spirit of a man who refused to let tragedy define his life.